Hey y'all, welcome. Today we're going to be picking up kind of at the painting point of this project. Things are pretty light right now. Obviously, if you want to see all the steps to get here, I can do that at some point. This I did a sketch of, and I can show you that. So I did this little sketch in my sketchbook. Not that fancy, not that great. I worked it a little more, brought it into Procreate, worked this snake a little more, and then kind of reworked the flowers just so, something a little more refined. I print that out, tape it to the back, make sure the size is right, tape it to the back, and then I trace this. And then these guys here are all free-handed, so I just took a pencil. I usually like to draw with a red pencil, kind of like this. It just is light. I kind of freehand them. Obviously, I had somewhat of a plan. I knew I wanted to do blossoms in the corner, and then I kind of drew these falling blossoms as well. So join me while we paint this bad boy, and obviously if you have any questions or anything like that, shoot them in the comments and let me know. So I think what I'd like to use for this whole project is the System 3 acrylic ink. I'm going to start with this Mars Black. If I change anything, I'll let you know along the way. I just really like these acrylic inks. You can use them straight out of the bottle and they're pretty opaque. And then you can also water them down and use them like watercolors. The biggest thing that I like about these is once they dry, they don't reactivate when you wet it, and some watercolors will reactivate. I do have another ink that I use for lining, and I'll outline everything at the end, and I'll show you all of that too. But this matte India ink is really nice. I'm a sucker for a matte finish, so I like these guys. So in my time watercoloring, I've tried a few different techniques, and the one that I've been using the most lately is I'm going to spray some water down onto my tabletop surface, and then I'll lay this down and then spray a little bit over the top just to help saturate the paper. It helps blend some of the colors a little more, or get your nice like deep black to a gradiated edge, and it helps with those things a lot, at least with the materials that I've been working. Obviously, if you have another technique that works better, let me know, because I'm always trying new stuff in different ways, because you just never know what's going to be the one that works for you. I also wanted to mention that this is all a wash that I did with the acrylic inks. So I just I mixed a couple of colors together, made a little wash just to give it a little bit of that worn age texture, make it a little more flesh tone, so you can kind of see what the colors are going to look like on something that's not just a pure white sheet of paper. Sorry for my loud spray bottle. It's really letting you know we're using a spray bottle. Sometimes I will kind of hit it with a brush just to kind of push the paper down a little bit, spread the water around so it doesn't just build up in specific areas. Sometimes when the paper gets rippled, the water will build up in those little spots and it's not getting evenly dispersed. So just try to even it out a little bit. I don't know. I just kind of played around with this technique. I'm not an expert on it, so I don't know what the best way is, but this seems to be working for me, so I'm gonna keep doing it until I find something else that works. This is a good example of what happens sometimes when the paper isn't wet, at least with the acrylic ink, where it kind of dries into the paper. I think it's because if the paper has a little bit of wetness, it doesn't kind of lock into the fibers, but because it's too dry, I'm just not able to get as much of a gradient there. So I'm just gonna wet the paper a little bit more and rework some of these spots. I think we got all the major moments. Every now and again, something hides from you here and there. Even, I thought I missed something there, but I just realized I wasn't seeing it right. The other thing too is a lot of this is gonna, when we put bolder lines, a lot of this is gonna become a lot more readable, especially like in here, it kind of gets a little confusing. But what I'm gonna do next, instead of using the direct black to do this shading, for the flower petals, just to keep the shading soft and not letting it get too dark in the flowers, I'm just going to dilute a little bit of the black ink that I was using, and then we'll come through and just kind of do this little shadow pass in the florals. And I think that should be it. Oh, there's one that I missed. That should be it for the black. We'll chip away at that, and then we'll come back to color. The nice thing about this kind of watered down shading, it goes really quick. I really like how it looks when it dries. It's not too intense. Sometimes I try to do that on the whole painting, but I just like having those deep darks where things are closest and then kind of pushing that out. These I really like doing, they're this style I really like doing on flowers because it gives it just a little more of a delicate edge rather than that hard, deep, dark edge. Also, you saw in the moment before, I took my clean brush, I did a smudge there, and I took my clean brush and I just re-wet it, and then I just dabbed at it with a paper towel. That's a really great way to correct any mistakes when you're working with watercolor, especially if you are working with your paper a little moist. It just really helps to kind of keep things fluid until it sets a little bit. It gives you a little more grace to make those mistakes. So. All right, I think that's all for shading for the time being. Things always seem to pop up. I did a little bit of shading on the underbelly of the snake. After I did it, I don't feel as confident about that decision as when I made the decision, but I don't think it's the end of the world. And that's painting. Sometimes you just got to move forward and see where the painting takes you. I'm going to take a break, IRL, let this dry a little bit, and then for you, it'll be but a short moment and we'll start doing color. All right, day 2, and here's where we're starting. Now that I'm seeing it in the light of day, I think I might come back and just darken up some of these spots. I just worry, my tendency is to make things too light and not push the darks dark enough. So especially, when you're working on a clean, fresh piece of paper, there's something about pushing your values too much that I struggle with. So I'm going to come back off camera. I'm just going to darken up some of these spots a little bit, and then I'll jump back in when we're working on color. What I would like to do here now is I'm just going to test some of the colors quick that I've mixed up. I mixed 2 colors up. The rest of them are mostly from straight from the bottle. But I mixed up a couple of greens for the dark and the light I like to do. But I'm going to test those here. I'll also use this as an example of how I kind of do this shading. So I have a little bit of paint on one brush, and then this is clean and wet. So I'm gonna make a mark, and then I'm gonna use this to kind of pull that edge out, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So with this, what you wanna do is, lay your edge down, however thick or thin that is, and then you come in with your clean brush and just work that edge a little bit. And as you do, you can start pulling it away from that color block. So if you want just a light gradient, I would stop there. Otherwise, if you really want to bring it out, you can kind of work that back a little more, kind of like how I did in the leaves. And you can pull that out a little more, kind of like what we did there. So that's the technique I'm using. At the beginning of this video, I did spray the table, and honestly, in the course of this video itself, I have started using my thicker paintbrush and just brushing water on, which I also showed. I think it just gives a more even dispersion of the water. I don't know if that's the right word or not. And I think the more you can kind of evenly have your paper wet, but not like too saturated, I think the better for being able to get some of these blends. And also, like we saw earlier, if the paper gets too dry, that edge will get hard to kind of pull away. So you kind of have to play a balancing game. I'm still learning it. I've been watercoloring for a few years now, so there's always something to learn, So here's where we're at before we jump into color. You can see my little color swatches down here. You can see where I darkened things up. Even just looking at it now, I like things feel like there's more contrast. And I think at the end of the day, it can be scary to make a piece dark, air quotes dark. But I think at the end of the day, when you have these moments where you get these real dark pops, I think that's only going to make all the other colors look more rich. So I'm liking where this is sitting. We're going to start throwing color in. I have some of the greens mixed up, so I think I'm going to start throwing those in the leaves, and then we'll kind of chip away at it. I did end up adding a little bit of water to my acrylic inks too, just because it was feeling just a smidge too opaque. I didn't want there to be too much fighting between the darks and lights, so I figured I'd just water it down just a touch, just so I wasn't having to fight with covering some of the shading that I've already done. I also like leaving this light edge just because anywhere where it bumps up against something else, it kind of helps leave a little more contrast. When you're tattooing, that would be called a skin break, where you're letting the skin poke through, especially on someone who's lighter colored skin. That's going to give you more of a break, like how the paper is the lightest part. So it kind of gives you a break to just break up your little segments and let the color breathe. It also helps push some of that contrast. think for this, I want to figure out my color for the stem. I want it to be a little more neutral than the leaves. So I think I'm going to mix my two greens together. And then I'm also going to add just a touch of red just to kind of help neutralize it. We'll see what it looks like. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but I'm actually changing my mind. Now that I'm looking at just how that green is kind of a brownish green. I don't know if it'll focus here now. But this feels a little more like a brownish green. Obviously I added a neutral color to it, so it's going to be more neutralized. But seeing this here, I'm thinking maybe I'm gonna neutralize this a little more and use this for the snake. So it's kind of more of a brown color. I'm actually gonna use probably more this color here that I used initially for the shaded leaf, just to kind of give the stem the same color. I just don't want it to be too different. So I'm actually going to use this for the snake. But I'm going to do a little bit of mixing here. See if we can brown that up a little bit, you know. So this is the stem color. It's just a little bit of, what color is this? The sap green, and then a dash of the ultramarine. I love using a little bit of ultramarine, just pushing my greens a little more blue. There's just something really nice about that color. That's looking good to me. Yeah, I think that's the one. So I'm gonna put that down quick and then. While I was painting the stem of the flower, this color separated a little bit, and I really like how kind of rust colored this is looking. So I'm gonna add just a touch of this burnt sienna, just because it has that kind of nice rich orange color. And so I always find color mixing so interesting, because you are kind of playing that game of like pushing and pulling. I'm really liking how that's looking. Again, because of the color and the lighting, that's looking pretty dark, but this is looking that kind of coppery color. So I think I'm gonna do this for the snake. There's a semi parked right outside my apartment, so hopefully that's not too loud and crazy. You might be able to, I'm sure the audio's picking it up just a little bit, but so I'm gonna start down here on the tail, just so I'm not getting too, I don't wanna start in the face and then realize I didn't like the color. So we'll start somewhere where maybe if we change it, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, I think something like that'll be nice. We got the brown down. We're gonna throw a little bit of this yellow. You can see here a little bit of this yellow into the belly, just to lighten things up. I feel like when I start a new painting, I'm always like, I want to use some fun colors, and then I always go to neutrals and really kind of naturally dulled down colors, because I do love neutral colors, or colors that are pushed more towards the neutral. But I like having little pops. That's why, like the rose I'm going to do pretty saturated. And the flowers, I just, around the edges, I want to be a little less saturated, just so this feels like the centerpiece. So I'm going to throw this yellow into the belly and I guess hope that it doesn't look too crazy. It's a little jarring at first, but I think I like it. I think I'm gonna throw a little bit into the eye, just because this is such a striking color. I think a little there is gonna be nice, little pop. Here's the deal. I think I am going to change the color I'm doing these flowers on the edges. I'm just worried that that yellow ochre is going to be a little too dull, and I just don't want them to be too, I don't know, like not flowery enough. Like flowers are usually pretty vibrant. So I think I'm just going to water down this. This is the same color I used in the can I get it in focus? This is the same color I used for the belly of the snake, but because I laid that gray down, it was a little more neutral. But I really love that kind of yellowy goldish color. So I'm going to add just a little bit of red to this, and so it'll be a little more on the orange side, and we'll fill those flowers around the edges. I know I said I was going to do the rose, but I'm just feeling the flowers, so let's jump into them. Yeah, I'm into that. All right, let's lay that down. I decided I'm gonna throw some more of that Cad Yellow Deep into the centers, since that seems to be our unifying color. I also now I'm just realizing I forgot to do these petals, so I'm gonna have to I already threw, or not threw, but I wiped that color up. So I'm gonna have to remix this color and do these, and then I'm gonna throw a little bit of yellow into all the center of the flowers. Whoa, speaking of forgetting petals, I just realized I forgot that guy there, so I'll have to mix up a little bit of that green to do him. It seems like there's always something you miss. Oh, yep. Here, look at that. Now it's all coming to the light. All our sins of the past. It is time to finally put the red in the rose. I think that will be all of the color, I do believe, and then we'll do some more line work. Paint spill. And that cleaned up pretty well. There's a little bit still on my my mat, but I got to it quick enough. The only spot it had on the paper was this edge, this little spare edge, and a little bit right there. I was thinking about putting a bit of a black border around this anyway, so that might get covered. Otherwise, I can live with that. For how big of a spill that was, I can live with that. Let's get back to the rose. Sometimes I'll do this outer edge quick just because my brain wants to fill in all this first. So if I don't knock it out of the way, sometimes that edge will be a little bit dry. You just want to make sure your brush tip isn't too wet when you're coming out to do this, because if it's too wet and the paper isn't a little bit saturated, sometimes it'll bleed back out into what you just pulled. So the more you do it, the more you get a feel for kind of how things are going to lay and what to expect. So that's why I always try to, if something goes wrong, I just know that next time I'm going to try to do
get it a little bit better, a little bit tighter.
I think we're looking pretty good. I think when I come back in with some line work, I'm going to put some veins in these leaves just to break them up a little bit. I might do the same in the rows just to add some kind of something just to break them up a little bit. They do feel a little not necessarily flat, but they are they're just such fields of color. I want to just add that, and then when we do the lining, we'll also thicken things up. I'll show you what I'm doing, so I don't have to explain it all right now. We can kind of talk about it as we go. But I think that's it for color for where we stand, which even now, looking at where we started, it's really feeling nice. And when we throw the line work on, I think it's really going to feel good. So I'm excited.
Took a little break, coming back to things. Next, we're going to do some of our more bold outlining. So I'm going to use a nib. This is the nib here. This is a nib holder. And we've got these kind of thicker nibs that we can use. So it's round, kind of to simulate, well, markers simulate these, I would imagine, if these came first. I guess I don't know. But this will give us kind of a bold line. So we're going to outline all of this. My rule is if things overlap, I want to keep that line bold because I want to set a difference, or I want to make sure things that are behind feel behind. So I think if you keep that thick line, follow it through, it's going to help the eye denote that this is passing in front of the snake. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So I'm going to use this a little bit thicker guy, which doesn't seem super thick, but once it's putting ink down, it definitely is. And then I believe this is, it almost looks like a point, but it's a little more thin. And this I'll use, so the thick one will do all the outlines, and then this I'll come in and do some of this detailing. Definitely for the snake scales. I might do the thicker one for these just because sometimes that's nice to have those differentiated, but definitely these scales. So, you know, this will be thick, this will be thick. It'll be thick all along that edge, and then I'll come in with this to kind of do some of that detailing. Also, before we dive in, this is the ink that I'm going to be using. It's the matte India ink. I talked about this earlier. I'm a sucker for matte, and I really like how this lays down. So this is what we're going to be using.
Woo! Look how clean those look. I mean, even just looking at that difference. I know some people like that thinner line for the drawing, but man, I love the way those bold lines look. It just like really cinches everything together. I'm going to start drawing on the snake and rose. Once we get that, all the thick lines done, we'll come back and do some detailing. But we're kind of on the home stretch. all our bold outlining is done. I'm gonna let that dry for just a short minute, and then I'm gonna come back and do the detailing. I'm gonna kind of cruise through the detailing. I'll show a little bit here and there. I just don't want this, I think this video is already gonna be quite long, so I'm gonna try to cruise through that, and then we'll kind of meet up at the end and do a post-mortem and take a look at everything. Home stretch, I'm gonna use a 3 micron to come in, throw some veins in these leaves, and then the flowers a little bit as well. I came through, final touches, I added the veins in the flower, and I just felt like the snake was missing something, so I added a little bit of these spots and some dots in the belly, just to give it a little bit of texture, and I'm really glad I did. I think it looks nice. I used some watered down Payne's Gray for that, so it looks real dark here, but it dried or went on pretty light overall. Here, I can even show you. I mean, that's a lot, but you can see how thin that is once it's actually spread out. So, all right, thanks for coming on this journey with me. We'll do some glamour shots. If you have any questions, obviously let me know down below. I'll try to answer them if there are, but otherwise, enjoy.